Everyone. Today is a very special day in the agenda of this COP22. It is the Young and Future Generations Day. And this is a crucial moment to highlight all of the engagement and participation of young people, both to celebrate the good work that is already underway, and also to look toward the future of how we can continue to improve youth engagement, participation, and climate action. So for the agenda today, we have first the high-level segment with remarks from our distinguished guests, and then we will have as well interventions from young people, from Youngo, and from solutions which are happening on the ground to climate change. So with this, I would like to, I should also introduce myself. I'm Timothy Damon from the United States. I'm currently serving as the focal point for Youngo, elected from the Global North, and my colleague.
Morning to everybody. My name is Miriam Somocurcio Olguin. I am the Youngo focal point for the Global South. So it's like a big honor to be here with you, with such inspiring persons, to hear why it's important the youth voice into climate negotiations.
And so with this, I would like to invite Mr. Richard Kinley, the UNFCCC's Deputy Executive Secretary, to deliver his remarks. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. As you said, this Youth and Future Generations Day is a real highlight of any COP. I bring greetings from Patricia Espinosa, who was really disappointed that she couldn't be here today. And I know she told me that she had been at the Conference of Youth on Sunday, I think it was, and came back really energized. So the energy of youth keeps the older generations going, and I'm hoping to get a dose of that from the conversation today. I've come in a slight, the program spoke about inspirational remarks, so I'll leave that to Ahmed. I'm in a more reflective mood at the moment, actually. This is going to be my last COP because I'm going to leave the Secretariat next year. And that prompted me to ask, how many of you were born since February 1991? Wow. So that's my intergenerational inquiry to start with, because February 1991 was the first climate negotiating session. Seems like a long time ago. Well, actually it was, but I think we have seen huge change and huge progress in these 25 years. When I think about the early days, it was impossible to have reviews. This was seen to be too intrusive. We couldn't talk about carbon, believe it or not, because that was too controversial. Top-down views were the view of the day. And at COP1, we had 4,000 participants, half of whom were media, and registered for this COP, we have 25,000. So you see that we have, over time, drawn in huge numbers of people in the process. In the wider world, which I think is what really matters, awareness is hugely advanced over what it was in this period of one generation, actually. And we are in a much more positive space in terms of climate action. But all of this is nowhere near what is required if we're going to really come to grips with the climate challenge. Paris, yes, Paris was a really outstanding success. Combined with the SDGs last year, I think it has put the world on a much more reasonable path to a sustainable future. What I wanted then to think a bit about is what this all means in the wider context, in particular, what has happened since or in this week. I feel that the forces of social change and of economic change, the drivers of the market have been accelerating in the last years in particular. And this new directional push in society and in economy was what made Paris possible. But it is going to be what we need to take us to the next level of action. I believe that these forces of economic and social change, these political forces, are unstoppable, but they also need to be speeded up. And this is where you come in. Youth is the engine of social mobilization, I think, and of social change. You help to define and to socialize and to drive new economic models, social models of interaction, new lifestyles, and economic directions that we need to establish a new sustainable reality. We need to do this so that change becomes inevitable, even when governments and industry, some industry, may be reluctant to do so. We need to have this kind of economic and social wave so that governments will be swept along. I'm often reminded of the phrase, I'm sure you've heard it, that the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones, and we didn't end the horse and carriage era because there weren't enough horses. It was because we had social modernization and change, making a better world for people. And that is what we need to do now, with a new concept of what that sustainable future looks like. And this will require from youth engagement in cities, with governments, locally, with industry, so that we can drive this social movement forward. It means engaging in your countries in the implementation and the strengthening of the nationally determined contributions and the national adaptation plan so that we have resilient societies. It means getting involved in technology development, because the kind of social changes that we're talking and economic changes that we're talking about over the next 30, 40, 50 years are going to require huge technological innovation. The scale of the challenge is unprecedented, and it will take the energy, vigor, commitment, and dedication of youth to help ensure that this path, which has been begun, is pushed through to the very end. So I hope that with these remarks, we can begin to explore how we can make sure that that engagement is as effective as possible, and how we can help together to drive this new transformation of the global societies and economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hope that we also make the end of the fossil fuel age not be because we used up all the fossil fuels. And we have for you a present, a t-shirt.
Thank you.
So, for continuing with our panel, it's an honor for me to present you, to introduce you, Mr. Ahmed Alawi, United Nations Secretary, Youth MBO. So, let's hear one of his amazing speeches. He's always inspiring us. So you have the floor.
I'll pass the inspiration today too, and maybe to others, and I will do additional reflections. But first, thank you very much, Maria and Tim, for your amazing work and efforts over the past year in coordinating this massive and amazing movement. I'm very grateful to our partnership and for all the amazing efforts you have been doing in bringing the youth voice structured way. And also I would like to acknowledge and thank Sir Richard Kenley for his amazing service to all of us and to our generation of young people throughout this process. I think as you transition after this many years of amazing service and achievements, you can easily become a historian now of this process after being an amazing facilitator for this process. So thank you very much for your service. I would like to say in a few words, a bit of reflection. I have been coming and a frequent flyer to the COPs. Flying is not the best word to use sometimes when you come to a COP, but it's the reality. And coming to these COPs and coming to many other youth events or processes, intergovernmental processes, FFD and disaster risk reduction and different negotiations. Over 4 years in my job, almost I'm completing 4 years in this job. When I was appointed, I was told that my job as a youth envoy in part is to explain to young people how the United Nations work. Now, when I reflect in 4 years in this job, I realized I spent most of my time explaining to the UN how young people think. It wasn't easy, or it wasn't difficult, in fact, explaining the UN to young people on these processes. Look at you. I mean, you're already involved in one of the most complicated processes at the UN. But it's not easy, really, to get the international community and the multilateral system to cater well to young people. For far too long, we have been an invisible group. They're talking about us without us. They're talking about youth issues without really fully understanding perhaps what youth issues mean. And that started to change in the past few years, but we are not yet there. We still feel like youth participation as if it's a gift to young people. And I have been trying my best to explain in every process at the United Nations and beyond that, listen, bringing young people is not really a favor to young people. It's the biggest favor you do to yourself as an institution. If you want to remain relevant, you better get young people on board. It's a question of relevance at the end of the day. So the relevance comes with the question of commitment and being aware that you need to engage young people. But you come to the second challenge, which is the question of how to engage young people and how to engage with young people. And what I have seen throughout this COP process and the Youngo engagement, I've seen a very mature model for youth engagement in this process. Not only in the advocacy side, but also in the mobilizing around the world, and also in the very technical intergovernmental negotiations of this process. So when I think of one of the brightest examples that we could promote and elevate, I look to this room and to this process, and we could all be proud of the contributions you have made to reach to the Paris Agreement and continuing after. Now, to tell you the truth, it's good to celebrate Paris, good to celebrate the very painful, I would say, process that gets us to Paris and the outcome of Paris Agreement. But we are nowhere near where we should be. And resting to celebration now will be a bit an irresponsible act, I would say. We are still today seeing some voices that are trying to gamble with our future or trying not to take what's at stake seriously. And to that, I think today more than any time, this movement is relevant. This process is relevant. We have a commitment that needs to be honored, needs to be translated, and governments need to be held accountable for the commitments they made. So my ask to you is the same ask I made last year and the year before and the year before. Make noise. Don't be assured with promises. Well done is better than well said. Well done is about the commitments they report. It's not about the speeches that you hear, including mine. It's about what the progress we are making, because not like any other process, what happens here is not a mental exercise. It's not like a theoretical discussion around models for development. It's about a planet that we need to pass on to future generations. So my last note is, I'm 32 years old. When the SDGs come to an end, I'll be 47. And at 47, I don't want to stand up and look into young people by 2050 or 2030 and just pass on regrets to them, telling them, I'm sorry, our generation has failed you. Maybe you can do a better job, because it will be too late. Our generation is the generation of the SDGs, is the generation of the climate change agreement, is the generation of these big promises, and is the generation that just cannot afford to postpone this job from being getting done. So that's what's in front of us today. And my ask to the Yango, the climate change movement, and to all of us, please don't rest assured by any speech, but only by the commitments that will be reported and the progress that we'll be making. And for that, the best fuel for it will be making sure that young people come in board to take a climate action. And then a last note, climate action requires youth action, and youth action requires support that is tailored to young people. We need more resources channeled to support youth actions. And I know some people would argue that resources exist, but resources, even when they are available, they are not always accessible. And we need resources that are accessible to young people, youth organizations, and youth groups, so they will be able to take actions. Let's continue this journey together, and I really hope that we will be able to see each other 14 years from now, and we have something to celebrate and something to pass on of a legacy for our generation, not a regret that would pass to another generation. That is truly my hope, and that's my resolve in my career, and every step I will be taking in the future is to continue working and marching towards the realization of this agenda. Thank you.
I hope I'm there with you in 15 years to celebrate. Yes, exactly.
Thank you for such an inspiring speech, and thanks for supporting always youth engagement and action around the world. We want to give you this small present, even if you have one.
It gets cold at night, so I will need to.
So, here I am. Thank you.
So at this point, we would now like to transition to hearing from the young people. This is, after all, an intergenerational exercise, just as climate action must be. And I'd also remark that while two of these speakers are directly from Yango, we also have two speakers who are young people who were the prize recipients. They'll be introduced, but who were not necessarily active in Yango before this. And it's important to note that we appreciate your remarks about Yango being a mature example, but also let's bear in mind that there is no single voice of young people, and we're all sort of lumped into a single constituency, and there's a rich diversity that sometimes isn't fully recognized, and it's also difficult for us to recognize those under 18 years of age as Yango. And we hope very much that this will continue to be an intergenerational effort, and that we will connect what's happening with Yango at the international level with these examples of on-the-ground solutions. So with this, we will go to our first panelist from Yango. You're introducing Dominic.
I would like to, in following with this panel, I would like to introduce Dominique Tourist. She is from Canada, and she's member of Sierra Youth Coalition. She's going to talk about her experience in this fight against climate change. So please, Dominique, you have the floor. Thank you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. Does everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. This is my third COP, and throughout my involvement with the COPs, it's been through a variety of different youth organizations. And so what I wanted to actually focus my remarks on today is really about this intergenerational inquiry and what that means. For me, when I see it, and especially at this COP22, at this COP of action, I see it as a starting point to redefine what ambition is. So, how do we achieve the 1.5 degrees now that the Paris Agreement is entered into force? What does pre-2020 ambition look like, especially with the recent political developments across the ocean? So this is, we're in this era of action, of ambition, as we're told, but it's a time to explore how we can use the power of youth to disrupt this low ambition path that we're on. So how do we do that? As there was a really great event today organized by the UKYCC and the Sustain Us and other partners, I believe, showcasing that youth are talking, but youth are actually doing, and we're doing a lot. But you know, we are making noise, but the question is, are you listening, and how are you listening? So I have sort of two main points to say, but in this intergenerational inquiry, in this era of action, of ambition that we're in, we need to create new innovative and collaborative spaces for youth and elders to work together. If we're serious about youth involvement, we need to figure out or better define what meaningful youth involvement looks like. And we need to create the spaces to allow to do so. And most importantly, those spaces need to be created with youth. We also need to be seen as, you know, the diverse generation that we are. We are a mix of activists, academics, policy people, and we deserve a voice. And it's through leveraging that power and this energy that we have to push the boundaries of inclusion and decision making, and to push how we may be able to be represented in the negotiations, but also on the ground. And so organizations like the Sierra Youth Coalition in Canada, there's a sister organization in the US, as well as a lot of different organizations, youth organizations that people here are representing. They're doing such amazing work. And so as this is my third COP, this COP of action, I'd really like to see this intergenerational inquiry talk about spaces, how to create those spaces where that meaningful involvement can look like. Thank you.
Yes, we will be having the discussion portion afterwards, and I hope we very much get some answers for that. To introduce our next panelist, Donald Bambara from Burkina Faso, founder of Green Act. And I know that you're planning to speak about the kinds of resources and support that's needed to facilitate youth engagement. And you understand this very well, and it's crucial to making Youngo and all this more inclusive. So please give us your insights on this topic.
But please, next time, put me before those two, because it's so hard to speak after them, because it's so, you know, inspiring. And I forgot everything. But so I'm sure you heard so many times words about how young people are changing lives across the globe, right? And that's actually what motivated me and pushed me to actually go and to see it. So I spend most of my time to travel and move across the globe to witness and to help young innovators like you with the bit of knowledge that I had to actually help them to sustain their business models. And at the same time, I was both happy and sad. Happy because they were doing so many incredible things, you know, that you can't even imagine, you know, with the fewest resources available. And sad because of the lack of key things they needed and they couldn't find at that time. The first thing was access to startup capital. Because when you want to start a business and you're looking for money and you go to a bank that says, no, you are too young, or you still haven't started, so you can't get money, right? So where do you actually get that money first to start? Because that's a big issue, right? Because if you don't have that money, you can't start. And the second aspect I noticed is the lack of mentorships, because young people must they could be extremely passionate, but they lack guidance on the ways and to follow and the ways of doing things right. So I went on and on to research and to turn around the world to actually learn from some part and to share that knowledge with some others. And I came to realize that this is my bet on how we can implement that agreement, because young people, they started doing those amazing actions way before Paris. So Paris has actually it came after they were already doing things, right? But to do so, they really need that access to the startup capital. But the bankers are saying it is too risky. Yes, I agree it is risky, but that's also business, right? So if you don't take risks, you can't make money as well, right? And there are so many ways now to actually mitigate those risks, and that's where the intergenerational dialogue comes in, because I believe that's a way to actually provide that mentorship to young people, because sometimes we are fighting with our elders, right? Like he said, and she said, we need to make noise, right? But it's like in a big family. So we fight first, and then we help each other later, right? So I believe that's where our elders could be our mentors, actually help us to sustain our ideas and to actually maximize our impact. So my big bet and my big message in this COP is to believe in the potential that those young people on the world are doing with their small businesses or small innovations. And to close, I would just say that if you match young people passion and ambitions plus the knowledge of our elders here, I'm definitely sure that we can overcome and to actually find ways to actually even exceed what we expect from the agreement. That's my message to our leaders and to also to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. And for those who want to explore this topic further, I will note that the side event in this same room following the intergenerational inquiry has a great lineup on new efforts for enhancing resource institutional finance support for young people. So I would encourage you to stick around and address that topic in greater detail. And to go to our next panelist, Fadwa Brewer. She is founder of the Moroccan Youth Climate Movement. She's the national coordinator for the Arab Youth Climate Movement Morocco. And let's give her a huge round of applause because she was working very hard all year to organize the COI 12.
Well, good morning, everybody. So I don't need to introduce myself one more time, but there's an A missing here in R. So my name is Fadwa Brewer, not Fadwa Poor. So that's okay. Well, I'm going to talk about the COI 12 as an opportunity to gather youth from all over the world to deliver a message for the COP. The initiative has been taken by Yango since long ago, and this year we, as Moroccan people, Moroccan youth civil society, try to facilitate the process in order to deliver very important messages to the COP22, perceived as a COP of action after the Paris Agreement. So we try to reach out those who are not reachable, those who cannot have the opportunity to be among us today, and also to align to the whole process, because if we are expecting action from the COP22, we also need to take into consideration youth involvement and youth initiative, because all over the world, I've never seen some like young people just trying to talk about politics, but rather actions. So we try to focus the COI this year by, through our mobilization process on what actions youth are leading from all over the world, and make from the COI International opportunity to have all of this put in one document to be presented and to showcase the leadership of young people in leading climate solutions and also addressing climate issues in different aspects. So we try to be as much inclusive as we can, regardless of the challenges, the financial challenges, and also we've been all volunteering. When we talk about volunteering, is also one of the main challenges in organizing such a huge manifestation, because a volunteer is always someone who has many things to do aside. So we try to manage with all these challenges in order to organize a COI 12 and to make sure that people will be coming from all over the world, and those who are not coming will be organizing local COIs. I just want also to really give a big applause to local COIs, because more than 20 countries and 20 steering committee from different corners of the world have been organizing a very, very, very impressive COI locals from different countries. So please applaud them, because and more than that, they also delivered a contribution paper to Yango, and you cannot imagine how rich it was in terms of solutions, in terms of alternative policies. So all of this will be presented by Yango very soon. Just keep tuned on the mailing list if you want to get as much information from that. Also, how can I add it to this? I just want to say that at this regard, we really need to show solidarity, because personally, I witnessed many specific challenges in different corners of the world, and my message, like on behalf of all those people that I was contacting all over the year, like, please ensure that young people are taken into consideration in the decision-making process, because young people are not disqualified or underqualified to make proposals. I believe that young people are overqualified sometimes, and it's not about the age, it's about the capacity. So this is why we are calling from this COP for capacity building, for education, and for accompanying and supporting on-the-ground projects and young people who are leading solutions, because otherwise we cannot keep trying to find mechanisms, and we're waiting for 20 years ahead in order to find out how we can implement the Paris Agreement. It's not time. When we decided to have a global agreement, that's why great, that was nice. But without mechanism, without inclusiveness, that's not going to happen even after 2050. So this room is full of, I believe, full of capacities, full of. So why not politicians are here now to hear from us what we are doing and take it to the tables, because negotiating without having all those people involved doesn't mean, for me, that's personal, but maybe also it's applied for many years. That not mean that we'll be having a very concrete mechanism by the end of the COP22. So please take into consideration what happened all over the world. Please take into consideration what young people are doing here in this COP22, and also what Yango is trying to accompany in terms of proposing solutions and also alternative policies. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Fadwa. And just to note, even though we're not sure yet of the location for the next COP, you can still host anywhere a local COI as a part of COI 13. So please make sure, if that at all appeals to you, you come and speak with any one of us from Yango during now or the 2 weeks, because we're going to start organizing that now.
Okay, thank you. So now we are going to change. This year, the second Global Youth Video Competition on Climate Change was organized by the Secretariat and other initiatives. We had many youth persons around the world who sent their videos to tell us how they are struggling against climate change. Now we have the opportunity to hear the winner of this contest. So let's hear Fawisia. Sorry if I am not pronouncing
problem.
very well. Fadul from Tunisia.
Yeah.
She was the winner of this contest. So tell us
Okay.
about your
Fawzia Bahloul, or you can call me Fufu, tout court.
Sorry.
Okay. So I want to thank UNFCCC to giving me this opportunity as a Tunisian youth to raise my voice and to transfer the messages and the values that I support. So I will talk briefly about my experience. In Tunisia, I joined civil society and organizations who work to fight for environment, and I worked with kids to educate them how to be more responsible towards environment. And I try my best to transfer my knowledge to them by simple activities. But then I realized that's not enough as scientists, because I am scientist, I am researcher. So I decided to work on a project which is about renewable energies, which to be more specific, biodiesel from microalgae, which can substitute fossil fuels, especially diesel from fossil fuels. And then I hear about the competition, and I decided to apply. And I made a little video, because I'm not a video maker, but I tried my best to make one. And then I win the competition. I am here today. It's my first COP here, and that's it. Yeah.
And welcome to your first COP. I hope it's not too terrifying. And we'd also like to hear from Kaya Rose, who is the Film for Climate Special Prize winner.
Hi. So I am a filmmaker and very new to this whole climate world. I jumped into it last year. And I think that I kind of have a different perspective on it because of that. I heard about this thing that was coming up in Paris called COP21, which I had never heard of before, and that it was being seen as this kind of make or break moment in history of climate action. And I, as someone who is quite progressive and politically engaged, and never having heard of this, I was like, what? Why have I never heard of that? And I started asking friends, and none of my friends had ever heard of it. So I set out to make a web series called Climate Countdown, which maps out the ecology of climate solutions. And up to that point, I hadn't really engaged with climate action or climate solutions, because honestly, all the films that I'd seen were very doom and gloom, and I just got overwhelmed, and I would just turn off and be like, okay, well, that's too bad. And so when I found out about Paris, I was like, wait, we can do something about this? Okay. So I started from that point of that climate change is happening, it is bad, we need to do something now, so what are we doing about it? And I started talking to lots of people, and I found out that there are lots of solutions out there, and the more I heard about solutions, the more excited I got, and the more excited I got, the more empowered I felt to do something. And I think I'm not alone in that, in my generation. And I talked to a lot of youth, which I often found were the most energized and the most exciting people to talk to. And they were telling me that, not only are they going to inherit the problems of climate change, they're going to inherit the solutions that are done here, that are decided here. And so they very much want to be included in that. And I also found that as I talked to scientists and activists and policymakers, one thing that kept coming up, people loved telling me about the projects they were working on, but one thing that they kept telling me was, well, if we only put a price on carbon, that would make my job a lot easier. And so the more I heard this, I didn't really know much about pricing carbon. And when it was explained to me, I just thought, this is like a no-brainer. Why don't I know about this? And why don't more people my age know about this? So I started volunteering for a group called Citizens Climate Lobby. And I've now gone to DC twice to lobby my Congress to put a fee on carbon. And it's an amazing group, but the youth contingent is very small. So one of the videos I wanted to make was about carbon pricing and to talk about carbon pricing in a really conversational way that I hoped would inspire other young people to when they hear how simple it is, that we want to make the prices honest, that we want to internalize these costs that we're already paying for. That I hope that I could explain it in a way that would empower more youth to get involved in this. And drawing on from what you guys were saying, that I feel like we could be the generation to put a price on carbon. And I find that really exciting. And it's not that we would do that instead of other solutions. It's that if we do that, it makes all the other solutions that much easier, because it really does transform the economy. And again, I think that sometimes people kind of underestimate how economically savvy millennials are, that actually economics is something that they care a lot about. I mean, I saw that being an American. Bernie talked a lot about that, and the millennials were fired up. So I think that this is something that, we're talking about kind of an economic injustice that's happened, and that we have a chance to correct that. And if we do that, it will bend this curve away from this kind of old, brown, ancient technologies into a green, clean, cool, kind of sexy technology. So I got really impassioned about that. And then when I heard about the Film for Climate competition, I thought, well, I had made a number of videos, but that's the one I wanted to submit, because I feel like that is the most important thing I would like to communicate to other young people. And I was very honored to win that category. And I hope to continue making more films about it, because I feel like there's different ways to approach it, and I'm not sure if I've quite nailed it yet, but it's something I'm very passionate about. So I would like to talk a little bit about Film for Climate. I want to just thank the judges so much for all the time they've donated, for being climate heroes, stepping out of their busy schedules, and also the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition for all of the wonderful work they do, bringing together leaders from government, civil society, private sector, and hopefully youth as well. And I'm very excited to be a part of Sunday's event, Film for Climate, Empowering Global Climate Action. So I hope you all can come to that. And I have the great honor of introducing the Film for Climate trailer. So I hope you all enjoy that.
Thank you. We all need to be ambassadors to everyone who isn't here, because you're absolutely right. There's not enough knowledge outside of this bubble at COP.
I'm singing this song because of the love for connect. I love what I see. Mother, I feel are beautiful.
I loved you since before I can remember.
Well, global warming is really happening.
This is the actual rate we are adding carbon dioxide gas to the atmosphere.
Your CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. Don't get me started with those animals and agriculture.
Are accelerating her change with our overconsumption.
The more we consume, the healthier our economy gets, but the more toxic nature and humanity become. And that is the paradox.
15.3 billion trees are cut down every year.
You would not be shocked when we see storms that are stronger than ever before, or more drought, hurricanes, and wildfires than ever before, because there's more pollution than ever.
That excess carbon is also acidifying our ocean.
So climate change for me became personal.
Le problème global, c'est le problème des droits, de manque de reconnaissance des droits.
We have a limited amount of time to resolve it, and it concerns everyone.
Climate change to me is really an opportunity for us as a collective society, as a global humanity, to really take a good, long, collective think at where we want to move forward to from here.
We need truly to transform our economy, protect our security, and save our planet from the debate of climate change. It's ultimately possible to make clean, renewable energy and easy to create good
Replacing diesel and other expensive fossil fuels with renewables like solar and wind is also about improving
safe and
the love
What we need is a lot more photosynthesis.
Put a price on carbon now.
Charging for every ton released would help carbon junkies break the habit, and we'd have cash to spend on new ways to avoid global warming.
Change is a combined effort.
Start now. Start today.
When enough people come together, we too will make waves and watch the world into a new era, filled with love and connection, freedom for all without oppression. But it is up to you, yes, you watching this behind this screen, to make the effort, because time is of the essence, and only together can we make it.
Are you ready to reconnect and reconcile?
Great job. Now, I have the honor to invite Her Excellency Hakima Haiti, Minister Delegate in charge of Environment to the Ministry of Energy, Mines, Water, and Environment of Morocco, and also one of the climate change and climate champions of the conference. So, please.
Thank you. Excellencies, dear Richard, dear all of you, really I'm very happy. I will not say delight, but I will say that I'm very happy to take part of this event. And I would like to tell you something you don't know, that this film, Laurence Tubiana and myself, we launched the Global Climate Action Agenda with this film. Yeah. You will tell me why, and I will answer. Because you are our future. Because you are the future of all this international community who is here today in Marrakesh. And you are the future of all those people who are suffering because of climate change. I will say also because your way of dreaming the world should inspire us, should give us lessons. This is why it's very important for us to know how you can dream the world of tomorrow, give us lessons to build the world you are dreaming of. And this is what we should spread everywhere. We should spread your messages, because maybe we are too old to think and to rethink the world you are dreaming of. And it should not be a dream. We have the responsibility to make it a reality. We have the responsibility to make it a reality, to improve your world, the one you are dreaming of. I have seen before many films of climate change, and all of them were catastrophic. I wanted you to dream the world of tomorrow, to inspire innovators, to inspire the parties, to let them have the right decision to build this world. And it's why I'm here, and it's why during 1 year, I was very excited to participate in this competition about Film for Climate. I was part of it because I felt that the only way to change the world of tomorrow is through you. And through you, the cinema is an amazing tool. Cinema is not only art, but it's art which can touch the heart, and when you are touching the heart, you are creating the revolution of the brain. And this is what we want through these films and through those competitions. It's why I wanted to congratulate you, to congratulate Yungo, the UN Youth Envoy, and the Connect for Climate team, and to thank the UNFCCC for this great job. I didn't have the chance to have your t-shirt, Richard. I'm very jealous. Thank you. Thank you. And I will invite all of you to come to the Colisée on the 13th to launch the Connect for Climate competition, and the winner will be awarded by the Prince of Monaco on the evening of the 13th. So thank you for what you are doing. Please help us to spread the word. I'm not the champion. You are the champions. You are the champions. So this is your job, to be the champions of the climate. I heard you saying that you are going to lobby with your Congress. This is amazing. So please, all of you should do that. All of you should spread the message. And all of us, being connected together, we will do it and we will succeed. And Obama used to say, we can. Yes, we can. We should say and shout very loudly, yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
So we're going to pause for a moment to take a picture from the panelists, and then we will shift gears to hearing from everyone else in the discussion.
Yeah, okay. Maybe the minister will join. T-shirt. Ahmed, Linisha, maybe you'll join us, Minister. Well, yeah, we will. That's the.
Yeah.
Okay.
No?
You for climate.
Ah, pardon. Islam was not here. It will be catastrophic from that. Thank you.
Celebrate your winners and project.
I think there's a discussion.
Okay. So, as already Tim announced, now it's time to discuss a little bit what is the role of youth in the implementing of Paris Agreement. So, let's hear what they think. What think the people in our panel? And what think the audience about this topic. So the floor is open. We can hear you. Hear your questions.
Yeah.
First question. Do we have a microphone? There should be. Yep, here it comes.
Hello. Hello to everybody. My name is Emily Gaillard. I'm professor of international environmental law and international human rights law. And I dedicate my research on law for future generations and how recognize human rights for future generations and also crimes against future generations. I have 3 points to present to you and to emphasize, and I would like to share this information with you. First, have you ever heard about the Urgenda case? The Urgenda case in the Netherlands. Have you ever heard about our Children's Trust in the United States and also Notre Affaire à tous in France? These are civil society creations. Civil society is asking on behalf of future generations and of young people of today, to recognize legal climate action. En français, une action en justice climatique. In English, a legal climate action. I would like to ask you to strengthen this question of civil society, because we should recognize this in the general framework of climate change. I would like also, second point, to alert on the fact that there is an acceleration of transgenerational threats. For instance, yesterday, I was absolutely astonished when I heard someone who said that we have allowed amendments to the Montego Bay Convention, and that now it is possible to modify the oceans with geoengineering. And this is typically against human rights of future generations. It's against also the general principles of environmental law, such as the precautionary principle. And I think we have to upgrade our level of consciousness, and that you have to ask for also a humility on the use of technology. Be also aware that the next step, and this is the third point, that after modifying the earth with geoengineering, there are other people who are strongly the project to enhance human and to connect you directly in your brain. So there are strong threats for future generations, and this is my role to alert all of you from the UN, but also the young people. And I can make also contacts for you with the networks of attorneys, because this is a very important issue. I would like to ask you your reaction. Are you aware of this? And what do you do? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. We'll take two more and then let the panel respond. I will also say, as one of the young people who is pushing to successfully get intergenerational equity to be recognized in the Paris Agreement for the first time in any international legal document, we're very much on board with these intergenerational concerns. So second question, I saw the front row, and then you. Could we get up the microphone to the front, please? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Dion Shikuza from Namibia. I'm a youth activist, and I work with young people and also my institutions down there. So my question is more directed to Yango first and foremost, because coming from Africa, I personally feel that we don't have a very active voice in the Yango structure. And by virtue of being a citizen of a member state that is signatory to the UNFCCC, we should actually have an active voice in the Yango structure as well. So if you speak about inclusivity, solidarity, and youth engagement, and intergenerational inquiry, for example, how do you want to isolate the largest population of young people on the planet? And in a few decades to come, most newborn babies will be African. So you can't speak about youth without Africa. And I'm not talking about skin color. I'm talking about geographic position and population size. And I would like then to suggest that these north and southern focal points should actually be decentralized, because it's very difficult in Africa itself to coordinate the entire continent. Looking at our political past, we are very divided. We also have language barriers. So it'll make more sense if you could have two focal points for the African region, because how this relates to the empowerment and implementing of the Paris Agreement is this. I personally believe you don't need a degree to plant a tree, sweep the streets, conserve water, or save energy. And in Africa, you find more young people who are uneducated and don't have access to institutions like universities. It's expensive, and they are all over encumbered. So I believe our national policies could make a mix with these young people on the ground, and they can be the implementing agencies in the rural communities, in those areas down there. So this is my suggestion to you as the Yango structure. I think you should seriously look at that, and then we can create a more vibrant Yango initiative so that we can push this forward. Otherwise, we're not intergenerationally empowering anyone. We are just speaking of youth, but it's a very diverse and wide demographic. And for that particular reason, please pay attention.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edwin Muhumza from Uganda. Uganda falls in the East African region. Hello, young people of the world. I want to welcome you And I'm happy that UNFCCC really recognized us and have given us an opportunity to participate in the COP. I just want to kindly request, is it possible that for the very first time, the conference of young people takes place in the East African region, and we'll be glad that Uganda hosts the International Youth Forum on Climate Change. Is it possible that we can host you and we discuss issues related to climate change? Young people are most vulnerable, and we have the rising population in the world. I participated in the video competition, but I'm glad I'm here, and I'm happy for her. She has really made it up to this time. That is it. Thank you so much.
Responses from the panel? Don't be shy, panel. You talked earlier, you can do it again.
Okay, I like to talk about the comment or question about Youngo's composition. I think it highlights, and I'm not going to respond directly to that because that's Youngo is a group that make decisions together, and I think that's a discussion that we can have during spokes council. But I'd like to. It's a really good point that you highlight, and I think the role of Youngo in this ambition era that we're calling it can be twofold, and one touches on how to best represent the diverse youth that exists around the world and that are active in the climate movement, location-wise, but also in terms of, like I mentioned, the diversity of actors. We have activists, but academics as well, and policy advisors and so on. So how do we, best leverage that? The second point I think that Youngo can play a role in is evaluating how to be more effective within the UNFCCC processes. There's such technical negotiation. As we noted, this is some of the most complex UN-level work that's being done. And as someone who has attended technical meetings on behalf of Youngo, I think that there's a lot of capacity building opportunities that we can have in terms of understanding the different processes, understanding and contributing to the submissions that get done by national entities, building capacity in identifying the channels for us to contribute to our national entities. So I think, moving forward, and this is a discussion to have with everyone, all the young people involved, is how do we best see Youngo? How do we see its effectiveness within the system? And how can we best represent the youth that are part of this global movement? I'll let anyone else kind of
Thank you, Dominic. Yes, and to continue on a point, I feel you because I'm African, my skin and also inside. And actually, with Youngo, what you need to understand is you first have to stand up and go and get the information, right? Because in Youngo, it's just like, and there is no leadership. I mean, there are focal points, right? But it doesn't mean that they're the leaders, right? So they are just passing the information, right? And I actually got into Youngo last year, right? But then I went and asked so many questions that he was mad of. But anyway, I understood how it works, right? And how to get information. And then you can be active. You can be like, being active is up to you. Like, there is no barrier, literally, actually. You just have to go and get the information. But I understand that it's a bit confusing at first, because on the outside it looks like it's an NGO or something. You don't really know what's happening in Youngo, but it's not an NGO. It's like a constituency, right? So it's like all of us. If you want to get something, you just have to go and get it. Yeah, that's it, literally.
Yeah, I second my colleagues in that, and I just want to again highlight something that we cannot wait until to be in a specific framework in order to act. We can even act locally, like within our small NGOs, etc. For example, why not next year Uganda organize a local COI? Because it's time really to showcase leadership, because the COI itself is an opportunity to bring young demands to the table of negotiators, and this is why Youngo is there, and this is why local focal points are there. It's not in terms of status being a focal point, it's like new charge of work, like volunteering work. It's not a paid position or even something that you get benefit from, because who are deciding, or all those people who are joining Youngo, which is a constituency group open to everyone, and everyone can join. It's just like it's a bridge to link youth civil society to UNFCCC secretary, and to be really to have a voice within the negotiation. So why not now to show leadership in the just after the COP 2022? Well, yeah. During the COP, but also after the COP, and start thinking about who's going to organize the COP 13. Sorry, maybe Uganda. I really appreciate the work you are doing in the country, but it's really time to take it up to another level and showcase your leadership in the country. And it's an open call to all of you to start thinking from now who's going to be the next voice of global youth next year. Thank you.
To just add, the side event I mentioned happening after this is again on resources. And I think that's the biggest step that we need to really enable the kind of inclusivity which Youngo is lacking. But we are very much aware, and hopefully we leave Marrakesh with tangible next steps towards fixing that very prevalent issue. And to the first point, this is why we need legal guardians for future generations, because we are taking decisions such as geoengineering, which have a huge amount of risk and uncertainty. And I'm really hoping that it won't be necessary for future COPs to be negotiating the use of geoengineering. We'd better not reach that point. So let's all make sure that we implement the Paris Agreement, the 2030 agenda, and we don't need to have geoengineering discussions become an agenda item at the COP. Please, no. All right, in the very back, you have the microphone, and then we'll move one ahead of you. Oh, in the very back, then this gentleman, and then, yes.
So, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karuna Rana, the coordinator of the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network. And I just wanted to contribute on the Global South discussion when it comes to Youngo. Firstly, I want to say that I come from Global South Mauritius, and we have to take ownership of Youngo. We can't keep blaming the global north when we're not being part of it. So, and I want to say that how we've done it, and we have started doing it. So we actually had a training in Mauritius last month, and the training was called Prep for COP, and it's a program that we are launching at COP22, where when we talk about the Paris Agreement, we want to publicize it, we want to make it popular amongst young people, and the training did exactly that. So we prepare young people from climate vulnerable countries from the global south to firstly know what is the UNFCCC, know about the COP22, and just know about the work that Youngo does, and try to get a delegation to come here. So we actually even held a local COI in Mauritius this year. We also came up with a youth toolkit on SIDS and climate change for any young person from a small island developing state to understand the science impacts and negotiations bit of climate change. I think these are kind of initiatives that we Global South should be doing and replicating elsewhere. So I wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to suggest is maybe trying to have a youth-friendly version of the fifth assessment report of the IPCC. I think that could be something that would make it more popular to young people. The last thing I want to say is that we're actually continuing this discussion tomorrow at 5:30 in the African Pavilion with the government of Fiji, Seychelles, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and Can International. The Commonwealth is very keen to have to get intergenerational equity in the Paris Agreement, and I invite you everyone, because I think it's time that we take ownership, and this is something that we should all be doing. Thanks.
Okay, please. Yes.
Thank you very much for your inspiring speeches. So My name is Omar. I'm from Morocco. I'm representing the International Federation of Medical Students Associations. So this is more of a comment on something that was mentioned and an example of the important role youth are playing and all the actions they should be doing in this process, and especially future health professionals. The IFMC, our federation, believes that dialogue starts with education. Unfortunately, the topic of climate change is not addressed in the medical curriculum of many medical schools around the world. Therefore, one action that the Federation has done to address this is that we developed a training on a training manual titled Climate and Health, Enabling Students and Young Professionals to Understand and Act Upon Climate Change Using a Health Narrative. So we developed this together with the WHO and the United Nations Alliance on Climate Change, Education, Training, and Public Awareness. We created this manual in response to a lack of resources available and easily accessible for young professionals and students who are interested in leading educational activities in the field of climate change and health. The training manual aims to provide training and education opportunities for students on the health consequences of climate change, the co-benefits of mitigation, and the role of health sector in adaptation and mitigation efforts. It discusses climate change with a unique perspective on the health implications, impact, and opportunities, and showcases good practices and policies that protect and promote our health. So you can find that in the IFMC website if you're interested. This manual should serve as a first step into the interlinkages between advocacy, climate change, health, and capacity building. This manual is also a first step to engage more young and future health professionals in the climate action. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Desiree. I'm the Youth Programs Manager at the South African Institute of International Affairs. We work with about over 6,000 young people in South Africa. One of our biggest challenges is actually really getting down to how do you unpack policy participation, and when you take things like the negotiations and you drop a draft, for example, last year of the Paris Agreement in front of a 15-year-old and say, okay, how do you understand this language and this wording? And many of the resources we've created from scratch, but we often feel like and know that there are many other people doing the exact same thing. And can there not be a better way that through the UN Youth Envoy's website, for example, that more of these resources could actually be shared with each other? When we go to national stakeholder meetings, we're often the only ones providing a youth perspective or even something in writing. And that's always what delegates often say is we need enough to just speak. Well, how do we better capacitate? And also our institute is based at a university, and equally so, it is a discussion more professors are starting to have about how to incorporate this stuff even into undergraduate classes, and we're even trying to do something at high school. But again, there's a lack of vision. Awareness on climate change is one thing, but understanding how these types of processes actually happen is one of our biggest questions, and we'd love to hear from other people here. Final thing I'll say is this. We work a lot also on the SDGs, and we feel like there's a big disconnect between Youngo and the UN Major Group for Children and Youth. And equally, it's the same sort of process, you just kind of get involved. But is there not a better way that these things could come together? They often feel like they're at competition. We're sitting in South Africa and we go to things like the World Humanitarian Summit, which deals with climate change. We're dealing with SDGs, which goal 13 is climate change. Can we not work better to bring these things to, more together and make them all more accessible for everyone? Thank you.
And this will be the last intervention so that we'll have time for some quick responses from the panel. Sorry.
My name is Emily. I come from Changemaker International Youth Network, which is a global network related to ACT Alliance. There's a member organization of our network, which is youth from the global south. They really tried to get funding to get here, but they couldn't. And youth is more than half of the world population is under 30 years. So I would like to, and there's not so many youth from the global south attending COP22, even though there's the most vulnerable and the one who's really who really want to act as well on climate on the climate agenda. So I want to ask Ahmed and also Richard what reflections you have about this issue, and if there's something you want to do something about.
Yeah. Well, the two questions I believe were I could comment on is the first about communicating these agreements and this work to young people. And let me be frank. I mean, I think the area of communication for development is one of the areas that underdeveloped. I mean, we all the time talk about how to communicate everything we do. And I'm not convinced that we have exhausted all means and innovation and really putting communication as a core question when we develop or when we conduct development work. It was said before, and that one singer, for example, in Facebook has more followers than all international development agencies combined. That's Justin Timberlake, actually. So he has more likes and more followers on Facebook than all international development agencies, including the UN agencies. So clearly, I mean, there's much more could be done to communicate for development. And I think your suggestion of putting all these materials in one place and backing youth organizations is something we try to do as much as possible in my office and our website by putting resources for youth, opportunities for youth in one place. So when you know about these things, send it to the office, and we always try to inform the youth sector about some of these opportunities. But I think that's also a bigger question. And last week I was meeting with 20 directors, UN directors for information services around the world, and we were debating this question. In fact, on that note, and Kaya mentioned Bernie Sanders, for example, and actually, if I am communicator or if I'm like working in communication for development, I would pause for a bit and study Bernie Sanders, because he connected with young people in a way that challenged a lot of my assumptions about what works in communication. He is not young, he's not cool, I would say, at least in appearance, or he's cool for me maybe, but I'm not sure for others. But I think he challenged a lot of our assumptions. And I think that's a question that as we develop and go on this agenda, we need to continue seeing what works when it comes to communication for development. And for those of you who are considering a major to study, I would encourage you to go on that path, because we are doing great work in the technical side, on the ground, but I think we really need to get more people on board. And I am not convinced that people are not interested. I think people are interested. And Bernie was just a recent example of they are interested. We need to know how to package it, to connect it, and to find the right means of conveying our messages, which allow me to connect me with the other question about increasing the representation of the Global South, which I know it's a continuous struggle for youth organizations to ensure proper representations. I think there's no one way of doing it. I mean, basically saying that the question of funding is what is preventing the Global South participants. I come from the Global South too. Saying that there are no resources whatsoever in the Global South and they need a global fund for them to fly is just a false assumption, because there are enough resources. I mean, I see the number of delegations that they come in the formal capacity in the Global South and how many of them they come. I think it will not break the national budget adding 2 more youth participants, for example. I think we need to make a stronger case for the fact of the inclusion of young people in the official delegations, and that's where the youth delegate program at the United Nations. I'm happy to report that this year we have the highest number of youth delegates in the history of the program. We have 60 countries coming to the program. It's amazing. But and more representation, the highest number of countries from the Global South. I wonder why we don't do it here as well, and making sure that I understand that there are many youth activists who come through their own means and through their own channels. But I would like also to encourage member states and the official delegates, the parties who come to the COP, to also include youth in their official delegations. I think that's equally important, and that will offer a vehicle for more youth representation to come. And some of them, they will even have a different badge, and they will even to negotiate, not only to lobby. So I think we get to be creative about how we could add more youth to the table in different means. And I would not really buy the argument that there are no resources in the Global South to fly 2 more youth from each country. It's just that argument doesn't stand. I mean, but it's true, we need to offer more resources to make it accessible, but we need to talk to more official members or official delegates to bring youth to their delegations. So the two things, somehow they are linked together, because it's about engaging in people, reaching offline and online. I think we can do a better job in both.
A couple of points from my side, reacting to a number of the comments. I think a couple of the speakers referred to important elements of education and information products for education. And I think it would be good for you to chat perhaps with Adriana here, who is very active in the network of exchanging information and making available products that are helpful, and through a big UN-wide network where I think there's has been a lot of progress in addressing the kind of issues that you were speaking about. I was quite struck by the comment about climate and SDGs. I think it's really true that at least until last year, there actually was a political choice made that these two tracks had to remain separate. But what I've seen this year is a very strong determination in both sides that these two need to come together. We're not going to succeed on SDGs and on climate if we don't do it together. And when one looks at the SDGs, I would think almost all of them have a climate dimension. But you can't eliminate poverty if you haven't dealt with climate change, and you can't solve climate change without dealing with poverty and energy, etc. And where do they come together? And this, I think, links to a bit of the questions about participation. And I'm all for the importance to increase participation in international meetings and in international processes. But I'm increasingly convinced that the way to have the greatest impact, and when one talks about impact, that's in how to reduce emissions and how to build resilience. This is at the national level. The Paris Agreement has put in place a system that is very much founded on national action. And it is in countries where these plans are developed, where they need to be made more ambitious. None of them are ambitious enough. And to me, there's a desperate need for engagement in countries to not only implement the NDCs that we have now, but to make them more ambitious. And that's where the biggest impact will be felt. And it's through that we can mobilize more at the international level. And lastly, a quick word on health. I think health and climate change is one of the untapped issues that needs to be much more brought to the fore. Tens of millions of people are dying every year because of air pollution that is directly linked to climate change issues. And this is something that will touch people in a visceral way. We need to be much more active in the health community in getting this information out. We now have made quite a bit of progress in the WHO, but there's a lot more that can be done by the health sector itself.
I just want to jump on the communication side because well, that's what I do, and I might be biased, but I think that film has a lot of potential there. And I think on a broader note, storytelling in general, so that it's not just about how do we translate these technical, complex documents for people who aren't in that world to understand, but how do we tell the story that they're telling to people? And I think from your point about Bernie, and also, I mean, things like Hamilton, the musical, I don't know how many people know, but you know, when it was pitched, a rap musical about Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, people scoffed at him because it sounds really boring, but they have been so successful, and they have a rap battle about restructuring American debt, which you wouldn't imagine that teenagers would get into, but because of the way that story was told in a new, interesting, dynamic, emotional way, it really got through to people. So that's something I'm always thinking about, and I encourage anyone who is dealing with that or dealing with trying to understand these technical documents is like, how do you break that down and just tell it in a completely different way that really strikes that emotion and the heart of it.
So, that's it. Okay.
All right, unfortunately, we are out of time, but we still have more of the conference, so I encourage us all to have these follow-up discussions, keep this going. And especially Youngo is here, other bodies are here, so let's use this as a chance to meet and explore collaboration. And let's give a huge thank you to the panel.
So, yes, okay. Just for finish, invite the persons who are interested to join the meeting of Youngo every day. We have a meeting at 8 a.m. at Mediterranean Room. So all the youth people is welcome. And also, we would like to invite you to the Global Youth Video Competition Award that will be tonight at 18 hours on Climate Action Arena. It's the Room Fest, so everybody is welcome. And we hope to see you there, so stay tuned. And thank you for coming. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay.
Pas français, mais même comment parler anglais en fait.